Well, welcome everybody to this different location. It's kind of fun. I think we used to meet way long time ago. This was our boardroom. So first order of business is approval of today's agenda. It's an action item. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motioned and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's carry on. The study session tonight is on student attendance.
So before we get started, and thank you for tonight, and thank you for accommodating this new space. This is opportunity for a study session to align to a strategic plan and go deeper in attendance. We know that we focus on student achievement. Once the students, we need to get our students in our buildings, and for the students that are maybe challenging and have barriers, we need to work with our families and caregivers to support our students. So this is what you'll hear tonight as we go deeper into attendance from our building leaders. Executive Director Franks will kick us off.
Good evening, everyone. I'm looking forward to presenting our attendance information this evening. Our format, as you can see, looks a little bit different for tonight as we want to truly dig into a study session. So part of my leading up slides will be to launch what that format will look like this evening. Starting again with our strategic directions, as you saw on our slides last week, our focuses for this evening are amplifying student learning, ensuring that they are well prepared for classroom and career transitions, fostering a learning environment that prioritizes academic success, mental and emotional well-being, and inclusivity, and then with the attendance conversation, the strategic direction of building purposeful partnerships with families. So thinking about that as you hear each of the building principals speak this evening, those three strategic directions at the forefront. I want to center us around the accountability measures that we'll be discussing this evening. Minnesota has a system called the North Star Accountability System. The North Star Accountability System has 5 indicators upon which districts are held accountable to. Each of those indicators is listed there on the screen for you. We have discussed at length last week the data around academic achievement and academic progress. You have seen information around graduation rates as well. Tonight, our focus will be on the indicator within the North Star system called consistent attendance. By definition, with the Minnesota Department of Education, consistent attendance is the percentage of students attending more than 90% of the days they're enrolled in school. And then the adverse of that is chronic absenteeism. So that is the opposite of consistent attendance, again, defined by missing at least 10% of the school days. And that both of those definitions, consistent attendance and chronic absenteeism, are directly from the MDE's website. Another piece that I want to take a moment to discuss is you see different measures of data when you are out looking at school data, whether that is achievement data or attendance data, graduation data. There's different access points to that data. 2 that you see are the Minnesota Report Card and the North Star Accountability Files. The Minnesota Report Card, it's a publicly accessible platform. It really has a high-level overview of school and district performance, including that consistent attendance data, as you saw me share on the introductory screen. The report card data is really user-friendly format, easy to read by the general consumer, and it really provides insights by student groups, schools, and districts, just to really help the public understand attendance trends. In contrast, the North Star accountability file still looks at consistent attendance, but it is aligned to Minnesota's Every Student Succeeds Act, the plan, and it dives deeper into the data and desegregates it with each of those various student subgroups and looks at attendance patterns over time. When we look at the North Star accountability files, the purpose of those are much different in terms of allowing school administrators, policymakers, school boards, the ability to track progress and look at that data in a desegregated way. And then for administrators to be able to track progress and target interventions for students. So really, in looking at both of those broadly, the Minnesota report card provides that broad public-facing snapshot, while the North Star accountability file is more granular. It gives us a detailed analysis, and those are the accountability measures of which the state of Minnesota holds us to. So then I ask myself, and you're probably asking yourself this question as well, why didn't the data match? So in looking at the Minnesota report card and North Star accountability files, there's really some identified differences in some of the discrepancies you see between the report card and the accountability file. There's a lot of language up here, but the left side outlines 3 identified differences between the report card and the accountability file. In looking at each of those separately, there is timing of data updates. So while the Minnesota report card is updated at set intervals, most often when the embargo is lifted. That's when you will see the data updates on the report card. The North Star accountability file updated more frequently or at different times. And then that will cause some temporary discrepancies between the 2 sources. Data aggregation is another difference between the 2. The Minnesota report card, again, as I shared on the previous screen, more general information, while the North Star accountability file really disaggregates our data by subgroups, which can result in some nuances in our numbers. But it really helps us for some of the down and in data that we want our building administrators to look at when creating individual success plans for our students. Another identified difference is just definitions and criteria. The Minnesota report card is really, again, really broad. If there's a word or a theme you hear, very broad with the Minnesota report card. North Star accountability file, there's more stringent criteria because that's what we as a district are held to for accountability purposes under our state and federal guidelines.
So Tanya, so then basically, we probably look as an administration at both of them, but we just adhere and we're really, when we report numbers, we should be reporting off North Star. So if you're always looking at North Star, there should be no discrepancy in numbers. If it says this number one day and it says a number another day, shouldn't be any differences. I mean, I see that under the aggregation, there might be some nuance, as you mentioned in there, but is there any reason that we misinterpret numbers when we're looking at the same data from the same source?
I feel like the North Star accountability file gives us the most accurate information from the state, district, and local. And then within the local breaks us down by building and by subgroups within the building. So it definitely does give us the most detailed information to make data-driven decisions. The Minnesota report card, just as we looked at MCA data last week, right? It's broad. It doesn't dig into that granular level that would say, how am I going to help a student and provide an intervention specific to a student or a group of students. Yeah. So, Director Klott, that really, your question really leads to this visual I put here today, the difference between up and out and down and in. So with the North Star accountability files, as I've highlighted, it provides more detailed information that allows us to report up and out to the board, to the community, while the information also allows us as district leaders to inform down and in. So I can look at the data and determine maybe a subgroup of students I want to support English language learners within my building. And so we can see what our consistent attendance rate is for English language learners. We can break that down by free and reduced population. We can break it down Asian, Hispanic, Black, all of those pieces are broken down within it. So it really helps drive some of that down and in. I do have one disclaimer to add before we invite our building principals forward tonight. As you're looking through the data slides this evening, you will see data marked with an asterisk, and that indicates that right now there's no data in the North Star accountability file. So the data that you'll see is a local projection rather than the scientific correlation that has been completed at the state level. Like graduation rates, the North Star accountability files on consistent attendance are behind. So you don't receive them on the yearly up to date as you do other data. So I wanted to make a note of that, that they're local projections rather than that completed scientific correlation that the state does based on the data that we send to them.
So when we get to those asterisks, can you share with us what are some of the parameters around the projections, or what, when you say local projections, what did you use on the local level to get to those projections?
Great question. So locally, we use our student information system, which is Synergy. And so Synergy is the data. Danny Bryant, our Mars coordinator, uploads data regularly, and I might defer to Ashley to specifically answer how she uploads the information regularly, and then that feeds the consistent attendance reporting with the North Star accountability file.
Sure, so she has multiple reports that she submits throughout the year. And then depending on what that file looks like, that's where that information then is really put into the North Star filing system.
And that's where you get the discrepancy of really getting some consistent and some scientifically aligned versus the report card which just reports out without maybe all the facts.
Sure.
How frequently does the data come in? Is it like weekly, daily, hourly, real time? Obviously not that, I'm sure.
Yeah, yep, so I can get you the exact kind of the reporting system, but it is, it's more than even quarterly. But I can definitely provide that to you.
And the report card is just a summary of the
Right.
year, so it's not going to be as accurate as the continuous upload.
Right.
Yeah.
The North Star accountability files are also accessible on MDE's website, so you can see the full download of the files. Those, I can provide those in my board update on Friday, the links to how to get to those. Okay. All right, so getting into data. I will start with our district-wide data for Albert Lea area schools. From there, we will invite groups of building administrators forward to share their data. We will do the presentation and interaction differently tonight. Building principals will come forward, share their data, share their intervention strategies, and then on the bottom right-hand side, you'll see a question mark. Once they're done presenting, then we'll have an opportunity to ask those questions with them. One other piece that I would like to draw your attention to is at your table spot. Today we provided an example of attendance questions that principals and their building leadership teams may be asking as they're working through some of that down and in. These are really those questions that they should ask when reviewing their attendance data. I mentioned the one, number 2, the various subgroups, but also working through strategies or interventions, which you'll hear the principals present tonight. For example, you'll hear Principal Johnson share a strategy regarding a goal that his building has set and how they plan to report that out to families. So those attendance questions, if you're wondering why they're there, it was to provide you an example of some of those questions that our building leaders are working through when they're reviewing attendance. Overall, Elbert Lee Area Schools, based on the North Star Accountability Report, Director Schindler, one of the things that you had asked for when we started this attendance conversation was a 5-year span of data. And so, based on, as we all know, some unique interruptions in the data, we have provided the data that is available. So as I stated, there are some data sets that are not yet fully completed the scientific correlation. But in looking at working backwards, we're, what are we, week 8, week 7 of the school year? We're currently at 88.13% consistent attendance. Going to the top of our chart and working down, you can see that historically we have been sitting between the 80 and 85% consistent attendance rate. The 22-23 school year is an outlier. So it will be interesting to see as MDE completes that correlation if our local projection based on our synergy uploads matches that. Because it is different than you see the historical trend data. The blue number, I really just wanted to provide you how we as Elbert Lee area schools compare to the state. So the blue number is the state. So very, very close to what the state consistent attendance is reported based on the North Star accountability files.
And you'll see that 22-23 as a consistent outlier across. So that drives, pushes us to ask more questions.
Okay, we will invite our elementary team forward to share their data.
I'm going to take the opportunity, Kim's going to hate me for this, but it is Kim's birthday today.
We
Well,
have to sing.
right? Don't you think so? I think we do. You're welcome. I knew you'd appreciate that.
Start us out.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kim. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Of course, we have those in the
Zach, we'll
notes.
talk later.
Yes. Yeah, you next is All right,
Okay, can I start?
sure.
All right, it looks like we are right about 90, almost 94% so far this year. And other than that 22-23, we went down a bit. It's been pretty consistent up until that point, so.
Similar for Lakeview. I will say one comment as a collective elementary team. One thing we did was bring alignment across all of our buildings last year and really worked to have a seamless plan developed that ensured that across every elementary building, no matter which one you're at, you're getting that common experience when it came to our attendance piece, and we'll talk to that plan a little bit later. One piece collectively as a team too that we ensured was supporting any families that may have had that plan developed last year. We had, as a collective team, made proactive, positive phone calls to celebrate attendance as the year started, while also ensuring that we just ensured any barriers that existed so we could support them in and with that this year. So collectively, you'll see our numbers reflect that, but those are some just simple, and we'll talk more about that later, but positive steps we took this year to ensure that we are aligned as a collective team.
All right, moving on to Hawthorne, you can see our attendance rate is near that 95% currently. And then obviously as you look to the left of the screen, you're gonna see that it ranges from, that 91% all the way up to 96. So obviously there has been some strategic conversation and work that we've mobilized in the last year to really come to a common place, and we can talk about those, and we talk about those strategies to increase that attendance. But so far in implementing this year and having those attendance meetings, it has been impactful for us and very systematic. It's felt way more systematic than it did last year to do that, which feels good, and I know that that will be reflected in the attendance percentages at the end.
And then at Hubbardson, we're a little bit lower at almost 93%, which surprised us when I met with the attendance team today, because we've only had 80 unexcused absences for our students. That's when parents or caregivers don't call in to give us the reason why they're absent. So we're excited about that parents are calling in and letting us know why students are not coming to school. And we just had a celebration at our last assembly to celebrate that. So we're very happy that caregivers are reaching out and letting us know where their students are.
Collectively as a team, just putting down, we have kind of 4 big strategies that we've kind of honed in on. One of which is just the work that we presented to you last week around creating that safe and welcoming environment for our students. And I'm just going to give kudos to our staff, just the relationships that they build with our kids and the work that they do in the classrooms. Kids love coming to school, and that shows through what we showed you on the slides previous. And then working too to help support emotional needs for our students, as we notice that maybe they might be having difficulties, maybe adjusting to a new class or different circumstances. We have those supports in place using our second step curriculum that we have in place for our students. So that's some of the work that we do along creating that space for our kids that they enjoy. And then moving down into our monitoring early intervention. So we meet weekly. We have a daily report that generates, but we meet weekly and talking through each student individually. And the thing I appreciate about our meetings, and I would speak for all my colleagues in this, they're not just numbers on a page, but they're faces and kids that we serve and care about. So we definitely know who they are, their circumstances, and what we can do and put in place to make sure that they are getting their needs met. And I know that I'll speak for Lakeview, like right now, I think we have 3 students that have 3 unexcused absences at the moment. So really working to cut that down, and I think being able to, may I click on this just to show.
This is a systems piece.
So this is what we designed and worked through last year. So a consistent, cohesive plan across all of our buildings that is when students hit those 3 unexcused, this is what happens, and it's that teacher engagement first, and then the letter goes 5 unexcused. We as a team meet and develop a plan with them, and then that kind of carries forward at that point. Any other pieces?
I just think that this has been helpful in very, rolling our teams out in a systematic way, and if you are the teacher, here are your roles. If you are the principal, school social worker, or dean, here are your roles. So it makes everything very clear and concise. Here's the script for a parent to contact, or a teacher to contact a parent, but then it just makes it feel very cohesive among all 4 elementaries.
Okay. Anything else on that slide? So I'm gonna keep going.
No, then next we have family engagement. So when we're reaching out to our caregivers and want to make sure that we're concerned about their child when they're not at school. So giving that phone call and say, hey, we missed your student today. Is there anything I can do to support you? What can we do to help them attend school? And then we do have our personalized support for students, check-in, check-out system, so students who tend to be absent more often, developing more positive relationships with other staff at the building. So we kind of call it a 2 by 10, 2 minutes per day, 10 days. But it can go longer if needed. That's just our beginning. But just connecting with more adults, talking about anything that they want to talk about, whether it's a football game or the video game they played, doesn't have to be about school, but just building that positive relationship with all of our students.
I will say the implementation of the app this year, I think we're all at that 80% or above of family engagement with that tool, and that I think has allowed for another way to meet students where they're at, or meet parents where they're at with communication as well, just to have those nudges and put that out there too. So, okay.
So, speaking of meeting students where they're at, sometimes they struggle with engagement, and so then we will include the school social worker and have some sort of plan that targets some of their attendance issues that way. We also have some mentorship programs that we can reach out to, partnering students with a mentor, and that will also help with consistent attendance.
I believe the question mark at the bottom is now 80 questions for.
The check-in, check-out, so that's an intervention, who is that with? Is it a para, is it the teacher, who is that with?
So that can be mobilized by many different staff. It can be mobilized by any staff member in our space. But the 2 by 10 stands for 2 minutes a day for 10 days is technically the formalities of the intervention. But I just think that in this instance, it's just building that positive relationship and that structured time to connect with whoever that adult is, so that that student knows, I want you here, I am excited you're here, and they have that message every single day coming to them, so.
I make the assumption that the structure is wanted by the student and it gives them some security too.
Yes,
So
yep.
security can build on it, so.
Absolutely.
We often ask them the question of like, who do you feel connected with in this
Yep.
space? And that can vary from a PE teacher to a paraeducator to somebody that serves in lunch and wanting to align that as well, so.
Some kids might even say it's my kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
So they might pop down to their kindergarten teacher's room for a couple minutes and,
I see after 3 unexcused absences, the teacher calls home, not taking anything away from you people, but the teacher might have a better feel of what's going on with that student than you, so I like that.
Building that relationship is essential.
And leading with that partnership lens, how do we partner together to figure out a way to support you getting to school and what might stand in the way of that, so.
Are there consequences for students who miss a certain amount, or not really?
Not a consequence.
not, we obviously, our goal is to remove barriers to get them to school. Obviously, legalities, there's truancy and that type of thing, but we work really hard to make that not be.
The purpose of the attendance contract is to help remove some of those barriers. So we do go through that at day 7.
And there's compulsory attendance. Policies,
But no consequences.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
If anything, we try to do the other way, so the more they come to school, give them incentives.
yeah, positive, yeah, that positive reinforcement.
Incentives over consequences.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the process. I was kind of curious on the numbers now. I would imagine the process continues after 10 unexcused absences. And what would that number, I mean, what is it, 180 days? No, that's the teacher contract. Put students 160, we cut
169.
169, so after that 17th absence or something. So do we have I'm sure we have a process, we get to that point. Is there any makeup to that process? If a kid gets there in April of next year and they're at 17 days, but they want to continue to come to school, because we get probably paid state aid off of North Star, is that correct? Oh, okay, that's why I look back at you.
No, absenteeism does not affect our funding unless they are out more than 15 days in a row and they just get dropped from our enrollment.
And that's that number again, funding wise, is that 15 number that we cut with the school. Okay, good.
And just with ours, you have the 3-day touch point, you'll have a 5-day touch point in which we meet face-to-face or develop a plan through a phone call. Then there's a 7-day touch point where we're just checking in and say, hey, what might not be working, what do we need to get in place? So multiple times we're reaching out to that caregiver to really make sure that that plan is developed and just making sure and checking in on the success of that plan along the way, really being proactive that way.
And then that also flags potentially more counting of other partnerships to support the student and the family and the caregiver.
Does a doctor's situation change anything?
Yes, there's,
Okay.
The way we code in our student information system is, that is one of the codes, right? Like they're ill, there's different codes for the absent.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
So Director Hoffman and Director Clark, both of your questions lead into the next slide very well. Those county supports. So kind of next steps, you heard the elementary principals share about their 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, and 10-day process. We built the county support slide at this point in the study session because there's a difference between elementary and secondary. Compulsory attendance exists, but for children 12 and under, it falls under educational neglect, which is a child protection response through the county. Once a child is over the age of 12, it becomes a child welfare response, which falls under the Department of Truancy. So at the elementary level, you heard our elementary principals outline all of the proactive strategies that they implement and their attempts at partnerships with families to remove barriers to allow their child to consistently attend. It's really important to really evaluate those contributing factors. At that 10-day absence though, the school can file an ed neglect report to the county to request additional services. Age 12 is different. That puts us into truancy, which puts Southwest in a unique position because they have children over 12 and children under 12. So once we get to the truancy stage, we do have a partnership with the Freeborn County Probation and Truancy Office. The goal of that program is to improve school attendance and address truancy concerns in a positive and effective manner. What you see on the left is the letter that actually went out to our families in September if they hit that threshold of absences to be invited to an informational session at the Freeborn County Courthouse. This letter was sent by our truancy officers. We do have true truancy officers that serve the high school, the ALC, our online academy, and Southwest. Currently, those 2 truancy officers are serving 60 students. One of the amazing benefits of our truancy program is that our truancy officers are present in our buildings. They office out of our buildings, they meet with students regularly, and you'll hear both Principal Johnson and Principal Dibble speak to the partnerships with our truancy officers and the relationships they build with our students to promote positive attendance. On another note, we just wanted to provide you the information on what that cost is, the partnership with Freeborn County for truancy. I did have Executive Director Walsh pull that up for us just to provide you with the data on what that cost is for us to partner with them. But it really is a great partnership for our students and our building leaders to have a resource to lean into. We'll invite Principal Johnson forward.
Hello everyone, so here is the consistent attendance rate for Southwest. All right, and then I kind of put it into kind of proactive strategies that we do at Southwest, reactive, and then just kind of some goals as well. So some proactive strategies that we do at the start of the year during our open house. I usually do 4 different times of back to school presentation. Part of that is the attendance piece as well. So talk about the importance of attendance with the families that choose to be at the meeting during the open house. We also have a Southwest YouTube page. It's got a variety of videos on there. One of the videos is kind of Southwest basics, and in that video we talk about attendance and the importance of attendance and some data on that as well. Our Dean of Students, who primarily looks over our students' attendance at Southwest, meets with the attendance clerk or the student service secretary now, and then also Jenny Hendrickson, who is the truancy officer that we work with at Southwest. So they meet Wednesdays and go over student attendance data and kind of figure out, where we're at with our students. New this year with our truancy officers, bringing incentives into the game as well. So once a week we have a video announcement series called the Tiger Talk. And in there, starting this year, we've included attendance prizes. And so there's different attendance criteria each week. Jackie Cromwell Olson, our Dean of Students, puts this together. And so what is this particular one? That week, the criteria was 95% present at school or more, missed less than 2 class periods this past week. So anybody that fit that criteria essentially their names went into a hat, and then 2 names come out, and then those students pick out a prize over by the student service secretary's desk. And so each week it's a different weekly criteria, and then who's ever in that criteria, 2 names get pulled during that as well. We also do team competitions throughout the year, and so every week we update the leaderboards as well. And so one of those is the number of tardies in school. So again, not necessarily the attendance piece, but getting the class on time as well. So teams that have the least amount of tardies per student get the most points for their team, and each quarter it's a new competition then as well. So some reactive things that we do. So the automated phone calls go out at 10 a.m. every morning for any student that is marked unexcused. And then for our truancy letters, like Director Frank said, we're kind of in a unique situation where, 6th graders, most of them start out at 11 years old. What we've been told is that if they turn 12 during the school year, then truancy will apply to them. This is from Jenny Hendrickson at the truancy office for Warren County. And so what we look at is that 3-day and 7-day. So when students get to 3 days with an unexcused absence, whether it's 1 period or a full day, it counts as a day according to the state of Minnesota. So if you dismiss first period unexcused, that counts as a day in the state's eye. So when they get to 3 days, there's a continuing truant letter that gets mailed home. 7 days with an unexcused, they're considered to be habitually truant, so another letter goes home as well. The 9-day, that is something new this year, and so that's when a family or a student gets to 9 days per semester, whether they're excused or unexcused, we send a letter home, basically just saying that your student has reached 9 days of absences this semester. Any absences after here would have to fit under one of the excused absences that's in our handbook. So what we're really trying to avoid is the continual parent calling in and saying, hey, my student's sick, or my student, and they might be, but hey, can we just get some kind of verification so that way we're not missing a lot of school. And so after the student receives a 3-day letter, the dean meets with that student to kind of go over the truancy process, what that looks like. And then also the big part of this too is any roadblocks the student might be facing. Is it a transportation issue? Is it, I don't know, any kind of issues that they might be facing to kind of help them with that as well. Because like what we tell families and students, it's not that we ever want to see them in quarantine wrapped up in all of this too, but there is an important piece of being to school and learning as well. And, when I was at the high school too, this is a big thing as well. And, I've seen families that, they go to the truancy court, the judge usually will tell them something along the lines of, all right, you need to make sure you go to class on time. They go back, after about a month, they look back at it, and then if the students got it figured out, then they're good. But if they're still struggling, that's usually like when the judge will issue an ankle monitor, things like that. And then they come back, and in about another month, they check in, and at that point in time, like I've told students, I've seen this happen where the judge says, all right, now you will need to be placed because you're missing school, and then the student leaves from court to get placed as well. And so, I always tell students it's a spectrum, right? We're right here, right? But I just want to make sure you understand, like, here is the continuum of truancy too, so that way they understand that it is important to be at school. Cool. I guess that's it. The thing that we're doing this year too with our newsletters is that we are giving consistent attendance updates to our families as well, letting them know how many of our students are consistently attending school, and then also the students that will be considered chronically absent then as well. So each month we give that kind of update as well, because again, the attendance piece, I feel very strongly about that. It has to be everybody, and not just the school, not just the family. Everybody has to do their part.
Any questions for Tyler? Are you seeing strong interaction on your app as well, that the elementaries have?
It's strong interaction on what?
Like, they reported that a lot of their families, like 80% of their families are using the app, or...
Yeah, we're not quite that high. Jeff could probably talk.
Or did I state that wrong? I don't know. No, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would probably say with the Thrill Share app you're saying, probably 60 to 70%. I don't know the exact number, but
it's catching up.
Yeah, and then not to get too diverted, but this month we also have a couple of different opportunities for parents and families to come in to learn more about that, and then also Synergy Parent View, just in case, because the open house is like a lot of information goes in. So now that we're a month into school, hey, if you got questions, come on in and we can help you out with that too.
With that opportunity that Principal Johnson is talking about, he really has removing barriers at the forefront, so providing 3 separate sessions for families, a session in Spanish, a session in Karen, and then an English session, but both Spanish and Karen success coaches will be present. So really that just idea of removing barriers and making sure that all families have access to the information and the supports necessary. So Southwest has done a nice job of setting those up for this fall.
And I think you'll hear it threaded through all that it's really supporting that way the invisible become visible, and I think that is important. I know I walk in Principal Johnson's office a week after, says, so let's talk, who have you identified, and he was able to name and talk what they're doing, so it's they're on top of the students. It's not just a data, it's looking at each individual student.
Thank you. You can matter.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
All right, good evening. So the ALC has probably amongst the most challenging attendance numbers we're going to see tonight, and that is pretty apparent when we look at the numbers. I'm very curious to see how the outliers come through when the actual data comes together. When we look at the 3 years, the first 3 years, the 17, 18, and the 21 numbers, we see that those are all roughly in that low to mid 20s range. So curious to see how all those projections play out with the actual data versus the projection. So, but needless to say, we've got some significant opportunity for us as it relates to our students in the Early Learning Center. Most of us are used to going left to right. I'm going to go right to left as we consider kind of the conversation, looking at where we're at. 21% of our students are considered past their graduation year, which in this case does not place them in that compulsory attendance scenario by state statute. And so a lot of times, in many cases, a student might have maybe 2 or 3 credits to finish before we're really done. So as an example, we have graduated 2 of those students in the last 2 weeks, so very excited about that. Also, when we think about the conversations around attendance and what is taking place throughout the country as it relates to the chronic absenteeism conversation, we think about attendance being correlated to credit attainment, and that's no secret, and that's something that I think we all recognize and understand pretty clearly, and that's why we're here having this conversation. Most of our students, if not all of our students at the Early Learning Center are behind credit attainment as far as their journey. And there's a lot of reasons that has led to that scenario. But a lot of our students come to the Area Learning Center with some very challenging attendance patterns. And so there is some challenges and opportunities at the same time as far as kind of working to overcome and rework some of those patterns, behaviors, perceptions, understandings, and so forth. So moving on to the left side, taking a look at what are some things that we're doing right now to address some of these challenges. One of them we're working on right now, and the Academy Day that we had just the last week was a phenomenal experience for our staff to go ahead and really dig into this concept and the conversation around our students, bringing them here to school or getting them to school. And so we're looking at what's called a kind of a Success Mentor program, where our students are going to be placed in, not like placed, but they're going to be cohorted with each of the teachers being the lead teacher. So if you think of the high school, you might think of the term advisory. Okay, we're going to create something similar to that, but it's not going to be a daily scenario. Rather, it's going to be more of an intentional cohort where there's opportunity for reflective conversations to take place as far as like, how is my journey going right now? Where am I as a student? What are some needs and supports that maybe I have identified that might be beneficial going forward? Where are some areas that we've been working on that we've seen some success? The teacher, one of the unique things, not unique, one of the nice things about our staff at the ALC is they have a really good rapport with our students. Our students come to school and there's already that inherent trust factor that's built in that a lot of schools don't necessarily have that luxury. And so we're very thankful, I noticed it immediately with this fall, with my introduction to back into the ALC or secondary environment. And so very thankful for that. So we're looking at how do we capitalize on some of that capital that's been built up with these students and these teachers as far as those relationships. So looking to break them up into cohorts assigned to a specific teacher who will then kind of be that leader, shall we say, that mentor, and then break it down further with constructive conversations around what are some goals we have, what are some needs you have as a student, what are some things we might have, resources that we can pair and match you up with, what are you seeing that's working for you as a student, and how are we within our system here at our school or within the school, how are we then meeting some of those needs, and possibly where are we falling short, and so we have a better chance to have that kind of that young adult conversation to say, you know what, where are things at, here's what we're trying to do, we know why we're here, where are things for you, and where's our path forward. So short-term, long-term, more immediate goal setting, things like that. In addition, we've been reaching out to parents and caregivers, letting them know, we haven't seen them for a couple days, or in some cases the student might be here with us for the first half of the day, and then maybe they might leave at lunchtime, and we'll just let the parent know and have those conversations. And this varies and with each student and each family and caregiver from call to call. Some of our students' families are in a situation where they are also kind of worn of just some of the struggles and the journey they've been in. And so some of those conversations, it takes a little while to kind of build that trust a little bit. So we're working on kind of building up that partnership conversation. We are exploring some very school-wide attendance incentives. We've got the rock wall literally in our house, shall we say, looking at some opportunities there as an example, looking for other experiential field trip scenarios and other things that kind of build up that rapport as well as provide kind of a look-see and say, look at where we've come. You know, one indication or one aspect that we have currently is just simply a measurement of how many credits have been attained. And so as of Friday, we had 52 credits that have been achieved within our schools. We're very excited about that, but keep building upon those successes and looking at how do we tie in some of the attendance numbers to some of those incentives and go forward from there. A good conversation that Mr. Gaston and myself and Dean Nelson had last week was looking at a variety of things, career and technical education related. One of them looking specific to the ALC is possibly how do we create a scenario where we can provide a tangible example of our students to be looking forward. So often as a teenage student, you know, that what's in front of me is very easy to see, and sometimes being challenged to look beyond a little bit can be somewhat maybe challenging at times. And so we're trying to provide some structure around that through a career exploration and a college exploration class. It's going to involve a weekly trip. I'm sorry, a monthly visit to, I got you there.
Didn't sign up for that, did you?
So as an example, as we know, all of our graduates get 60 credits through the Fremont County Trauma Scholarship, and that's at Riverly Community College, as we know, and looking at, you know, let's educate our students as to what is available within, you know, a very close proximity once they graduate from high school here at Alberta, you know, at the area learning school, and take a look at what are some options. And so Dean Nelson has been very gracious in saying, you know what, we can have, let's pick a program, and they would prepare our students an opportunity to receive a tour, possibly have some Q&A with students, Q&A with staff, and things like that, and being a little bit more proactive to get out there, and they've done this in the past, but tying it into a course that we can provide some accountability with our students and kind of build that cohesion throughout the school year. In addition, we'll be looking at October, as an example, October 29th, we have a field trip coming out to what's called Construct Tomorrow. It's an event that's held all throughout the state. When I say there's 5 or 6 locations this year, they generally are in a larger area like the Duluth, Minneapolis, Mankato, Rochester scenario. I know right now high school has about 32 students signed up for it. We're looking at getting maybe close to 50 or 60 students altogether. But it's a chance to see what's out there. If I were to, let's say, finish my high school career and jump right into the trades, working with one of the union apprenticeship programs, look at the compensation, different benefit packages, and see how can I take something that I'm interested in and tangibly move to that next level. So again, helping them to see possibly what's my why for being here today to encourage me to come back tomorrow. And so looking at some of those scenarios. Another unique scenario within the Area Learning Center is the Edgenuity coursework and kind of that individual pace kind of opportunity, kind of that one-on-one, but at the same time, our students would also like to see some opportunities for some small group engagement and things like that. So looking at, well, how can we incorporate some coursework that does involve some small group conversation, collaboration, reflection on the material. And so looking at building that into the programming that we have right now. So that's a lot of speaking. What questions can I answer or address or curiosities?
Is there any correlation amongst other learning centers through the state? Like we can, I mean.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. You know, that's something that would probably require a little bit more of a deep dive to take a look at what that looks like. You know, I know that I have no doubt that there are area learning centers that have stronger numbers. It's just a matter of understanding what led to that scenario and what can we do to maybe bridge that gap and be one of those area learning centers that others might look to and call us on the phone.
Probably not unique though, are we? I mean, I would almost think that it's pretty consistent across the board, other than some outliers.
Yeah, you know, it's, we work with our students and meet them where they're at, and they come to us from a variety of different circumstances, and, you know, each of us are in a different journey, different battle. You know, we've got families that are in various levels of crisis. I know when I was a teenage student, I lost my mother to cancer, and we had a very supportive system. You know, in my case, you know, we didn't have, you know, was a big issue, a big challenge, but one of the things that I didn't worry about as a teenager was whether or not I was going to be forced out of my home, whether or not I was going to have an opportunity to eat 3 meals or what have you. And not all of our students can share that message or share that confidence. And so there's a lot of challenges, unique areas that we look at. And so we look at wraparound supports. What are we doing with our students that maybe have that school avoidance? How do we connect that student that may have that school avoidance with a school social worker? How do we build on the relationship that staff have with that student from the last year or two to then address kind of the journey that they're on right now? And so we're looking at bringing those wraparounds in.
Go ahead, Neil.
To what extent do alternative school students take advantage of activities, music?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have the exact number on that, but I know, for example, right now we've got one student that I know is on the varsity boys soccer team, and very grateful the activity bus would pick up the student here for, let's say they're heading out for a game, maybe it's in Mankato or Rochester, wherever it is that the bus will stop here, pick that student up, and that's that student athlete and be on the road. I will say that our numbers of participation does not fall. I mean, it's significantly short of the level of the student at the Elberly High School. But to what extent, I don't have that exact number.
We can get that for you.
I would assume probably it's inherent in the nature of the clientele you're dealing with that they probably would not be inclined to participate.
Well, I don't really know. I haven't spent a lot of time on that, but I think some of the language that has existed and does exist as it relates to student being on track to graduate, being eligible within the state high school league guidelines, and some of those things that maybe we as a district have look forward to. It creates some scenarios where the students have had to, put their focus in other areas.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you for your time.
We're a team. Element, I believe 25 says physical movement is important. Anything after 40 minutes, so if you want to stand up with me and take a stretch, you are able to do so. It definitely builds energy and makes you want to come to things more often if you follow these types of strategies. So
It's up to you to keep it, somewhere under 40 minutes.
well, I have not been given a chance for success then, which will make me not want to come.
Not remove the barriers. Right?
Yeah. You want to go ahead and flip it forward there, Sean? There we go. So, as you may know, these numbers are numbers. They're round and dots and stars. But I brought my friend who I retired to the nerdery for the last week. That's what we call the scheduling room and our data room. And he's going to share some number beyond the numbers, because I think, although that the numbers are here and we know that that's fairly close, I don't know the state average. I know overall, but I did not look it up before we did for high schools. But 82.3% this year is good. But I did have Sean take a closer look at our 23-24 numbers. So do you want to share some of that with the group?
So what we wanted to do was give you guys some context of what it looks like really at the hourly level, because that's where we really need to intervene and look at where trends are developing. And so we looked at that 10% rate, like Director Franks had brought up as the sort of standard, and we looked at missed hours. That comes out across the school year at 139 missed hours. We have 143 students last year who hit that total, but we looked at just unexcused. And the reason why, again, yes, mostly excused, we've had a few mentions of that, but one of the things that gets funny about our data is some of our best kids miss a lot of school. Why? 3 sports, band, orchestra, student activities. 6 of our top 20 kids last year missed almost 20% of their classes, which is pretty remarkable to think that, but again, they're busy, they're active, they're getting their education through those other experiences. So we narrowed it down to those unexcused areas. And what you end up seeing from that group is pretty wide range. We have a kid who missed 831 hours, a kid who missed 139, right there at that edge. The other thing we noticed from that group and what makes our attendance a unique issue at the high school, and a little bit with Principal Johnson, is we still have that lack of an old school truancy. We still have kids who don't come to school. They're at home, they're around town. But what we see more and more now is the in-school truants. So we are the source of 2 meals for them. We are a safe place, we are warm, their friends are there, there's an adult somewhere in the building they probably connect with, but they don't want to go to class. And so they're in our halls, which presents a unique challenge because it's not just attendance then, it becomes a behavior discipline work as well. And so that becomes very clear when you start to break down the data from this group who's out more than 10%, they make up 55% of our discipline referrals. And a large amount of that is we have some very charismatic young men and women who have a strong gravitational pull. They get out into a hallway, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and pretty quickly a teacher notices a group of 6 sitting outside their room talking. So that's one of those other challenges we work with in our building. One of the things that is very impressive, and I think this goes a lot to our credit recovery and our intervention, is academics are being impacted. Right now our kids are capturing 77% of their credits if they've fallen into that attendance group. But that number is actually significantly higher than when Director Franks and I talked in the spring because of credit recovery. So every senior who fell in that group last year graduated. They made their way back. They weren't there initially. They spent extra time in our building. They worked extra time with Jen Henschel and Jackie Richter and those other teachers to get there. The more concerning thing is when you start to look at our younger grades. You're down in that 50%. 51.2% of our freshmen, that's the number of credits they captured if they missed class. So you're talking about them failing half their classes. 8th grade is even worse. So we don't track credits, but just a quick snapshot of the 26 kids in 8th grade, over 20 of them failed every class. So they're not going to class and they're not getting those skills, and our concern is obviously that plays out as we move into 9th grade and beyond. So that's the basic numbers we wanted to pass along. Is we are not unique in the fact of secondary's got it at middle school as well, but it's more than just that 77.8 or the 82.3. We have quite a few mix of issues as we work through attendance.
So in order to combat that, click again, it was mentioned before about activities. We have a very expansive and potentially free activities program for our students, and we found that one of the best ways to hook our students is to get them involved in something. And so as Dave presented about a month ago, I think, getting those students involved in an activity is a huge way to get them to come to school. I can tell you, I can name individual students right now who have only come to classes because if they miss a class, they don't practice or play in the game. If you have 1 unexcused hour during the day, you're not allowed to participate. That has driven up some of those in-school truancy numbers. The advisory program that Jeff mentioned, the Flex, we call it Flex. This is in year number 3, and it's starting to build that adult connection. I know a survey went out yesterday asking the students, well, who is your adult in the building? And they can tell you, they have an answer. 8th graders, not so much yet, because they haven't had a chance to build that relationship. The other thing we've done twice now in the last 2 years is change our schedule, which means we've had to change those Flex teachers. Our goal when we have Flex is to keep the same adult from the day you enter that building, and that adult reads your name when you walk across that stage 5 years later under the current model. And so by establishing our schedule and finding out that 4 lunches doesn't work, got to thank Jeff on that one, he warned us. Now we are able to keep those advisories the same over the whole 5 years, and we'll build that adult connection in the building that we know helps a lot. We added the REACH program last year, about halfway through. I know those students, I believe you had REACH data at the end of last year that said those students that got involved in that program as an elective, their attendance and grades skyrocketed. Making that connection to the school, having a reason to come is what REACH does. Director Franks already mentioned our Freeborn County Truancy Program. Jenny and Jenny are amazing. To have someone who can pull a kid in and say, your next step is in front of a judge. And believe it or not, don't let them know, but pretty quick here, when we run attendance reports, we've got a bus lined up, and they're not going to have a truancy meeting with their parents on Tuesday night. They're going to have it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in front of a judge at the courthouse. We're going to have a little impromptu field trip. This has been in the plans for a couple of years. We finally found the right judge to do it and the right officers to get it done. And then all of the calls, letters, and meetings that Tyler talked about, we do those as well. There's 3 of us, plus SAW, working with now 1,188 students. That's a lot of kids to keep track of, but we do it, and we make sure that they are having attendance. And as Sean said, the number of 139 or more last year was what?
143 kids.
143 kids. And so when you look at percentages, we're doing all right, but we know we have to catch those 143. And so all of these strategies are what we're doing to help it out. And I make Johanna sit here, even though she's not probably going to say anything, but it's great to have someone who was working with students. Okay, awesome, she's going to talk. But to have someone who is ALC and knows the direction that some of these kids are going, it's great to have on the team, so give us a shot.
Well, I was gonna say, as students get older, I mean, we know that there's a huge maturity factor that happens between 8th grade and 10th grade, and that what you see with students as they get older is they start to learn that their decisions are up to them. When they're in elementary, they rely on their parents and the family dynamics sometimes, and all the things are working because of those supports, but a lot of students that are younger tend to make some poor decisions for a few years, and then you start to see those start to change because they realize their decisions are up to them. It's not whether or not their parents are telling them to go to school. They know that they're coming to school, and having credit recovery built into the school day as well as after school, they start to realize that they are the ones that are responsible for that success, and you start to see that change.
And the final point, I think I'm going to build off of Jeff a little bit when he went. We have quite a few students who we know, we get the phone calls in the morning, who are taking care of younger siblings. And that's just something that the families in our community don't have access to, that childcare. So sometimes that falls on the high school age student to take care of. And so that's another way we have to find out how can we meet them where they are to make sure that they're getting their education as well as supplying the needs they have for their family.
You forgot one I mentioned. That bottom one, those last 2, those programs rely heavily on our ability to connect with our families and get them to work. One of the things that's a challenge for us is by the time a student gets to us in truancy, what we see often from parents is one of 2 things. They've been on truancy for a while, or what they tell us is, I don't know what to do. They've reached a point of, it's ultimate frustration. And one of the things that our social workers launched is they're working on basically referencing through the students who have worked in our truancy program, have attendance issues, maybe some behavior issues. They're putting together a list of ideas to connect those families to resources outside of our school. Because what they know is that those parents are saying, we can't do it right now without some help. But we don't know if all of our families know the options out there. So Sheena Poseen has been working hard on that with Brittany Roberts, of connecting up with families and saying, do you know your kid qualifies for this? Do you know your family qualifies for this? Because we know ultimately in the end, we're gonna need them to be able to get through.
We answer your question, Mark?
We're at it.
All right, buddy. Got it. So roughly 10% of the kids are causing most of the truancy problems. We got 1,488, 143 kids. So if you could really handle those 10% in a special way, like Sean said too, we could find out some way to get over that barrier, as Tyler and some of them talked to, that might really make a difference. Not saying you're not, just saying that, wow, 90% of them are really doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So, correct.
Chris, what's the role of the counseling staff when it comes to a student showing some attendance issues?
I would say not as big. I mean, they're really focused on getting the student set up for classes, and then what to do after classes after they having a plan post high school. Okay. I'd say most of the attendance is this team in SAW. SAW does a lot of attendance work with Jenny. The counselors are there if we need to reach out. Okay. But I wouldn't say, they're not tracking attendance like we are.
So it could be a source of referral?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
SAW is your success coach?
SAW is our dean.
Oh, okay,
yes.
So sorry.
He's had a lot of roles.
I did
He's been a teacher, he's been a success coach, and then this year when we changed our format a little bit, he became a dean, and he is fabulous. I mean, just to have The language barrier that he gets us. I mean, he's a leader in the Corinne community. He's a, I don't know if you've ever been invited or had a chance to go to the Corinne Church downtown. It is incredible. And Saw does great work within our school. I know he's a community service officer with the police department, and he's a pastor at their church. He is invaluable to have on our staff. Almost always the first person to have any issue that happens, and just a great person to have on our staff. Barring like some of the people in this room, probably my best hire ever. Christy's not listening.
I try not.
And I do also want to connect in the board need to know, board update. There's a national survey and just the amount of students that then declared out the boredom. So that engagement is important. And I think if we think about that 60-30-10, that 10%, that engaging and reaching out and again making the students visible and having that connection. And the flex has allowed for that to happen, to have that trust. We've talked about the student superintendent leadership cabinet is who do you trust in Alberley High School? What does that connection look like? And there's some deep conversations.
Yeah, and even with engagement, that's one of at design area number 7 actually in our Marzano strategies. Like when I said get up, take a stretch, that helps keep students in class. I mean, I don't know if any of you would like to come and sit through 7 or 8 class periods and see what it's like now. It's something else. There's a lot of information going toward these kids, so we've made an effort as we work through our level 2 HRS journey of making sure our kids are engaged and ready to learn throughout the day, not just first hour. So a lot of strategies out there that we're working on.
Well, I think we heard from the student board members last week that they see a lot of positive things happening, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
We really want to thank all of our building administrators for taking the time to share their data and share the strategies that they are implementing within their spaces or are looking to implement in their space. So we certainly appreciate their time and energies this evening. As we wrap up with our study session this evening, I just wanted to circle us back to our core values. And tonight I highlighted 4 of the core values that tonight's study session really focused on. And that was embracing continuous growth and adaptability with always learning, that idea of excellence, having a culture of high standards, and utilizing our resources. You can tell in the space tonight, collaboration is at the forefront of the work that we do at all levels, district level, building level, down and in, up and out. You can tell collaboration is there. And then compassion. You heard a lot of leaders speak tonight about inclusive environments and creating a safe and supportive culture where each student belongs and giving them an opportunity to have that each and every day.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your presentations and answering the call of a concern or concerns. And unpacking that for us and making it so we can really see where it's at. So appreciate that. So any last comments from anyone?
Yeah, this is an ongoing work, and it's work that we'll continue to do daily as the data pushes us to ask more questions, and we'll continue to do that at the building levels. And then have an update back to the board, where are we in our progress? As we report out to our strategic plan, our metrics, these are the study sessions, the information will come to you, and then we'll continually monitor the progress. So if our strategies aren't having any impact, how are we going to pivot to ensure we are having a positive impact?
It sounds like we are. A lot of wins there. So if there's nothing else, I'll ask for adjournment.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.